First contact gone wrong. The research vessel Horizon drifted silently through the Carina Nebula's outer rim, its sophisticated sensors probing the darkness for signs of intelligent life. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the main observation deck, her dark eyes reflecting the distant stars as she reviewed the latest scan data. After 6 months of searching, they had found nothing but dead worlds and ancient ruins. Dr. Chen called Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station, his voice carrying an unusual edge of excitement. "We're picking up some unusual energy signatures from the third planet in system CSS 471. Sarah hurried to his console, her heart racing. The readings were unlike anything they'd encountered before, clearly artificial, but using principles that defied their current understanding of physics. "Can you clean up that signal?" "Working on it," Rodriguez replied, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "There's something else. Electromagnetic disturbances consistent with weapons fire." Captain Maya Hassan's voice cut through the tension. "Full stop. Active sensors offline. Switch to passive monitoring only." The bridge crew complied immediately, knowing their captain's reputation for caution had kept them alive in more than one close encounter with spatial anomalies. The main display flickered to life, showing a real-time feed from their long-range optical sensors. The sight made Sarah's blood run cold. A small fleet of sleek, crystalline vessels was systematically destroying orbital structures around the planet. Below, cities burned. "Those structures," Sarah whispered, "they're made of living crystal. We're witnessing first contact and genocide simultaneously." Captain Hassan's dark features hardened as she processed the situation. Options. Protocol 7 is clear. Commander Williams, the ship's XO, stated flatly. "No intervention in conflicts between non-human civilizations. We document and report back to Earth Command." Sarah turned to face the captain, her voice shaking with barely contained emotion. "Those crystals they're using for weapons, they're not just technology. They're alive. These aren't just aliens fighting aliens. This is the systematic extinction of a unique form of life." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had spent centuries searching for alien life, hoping to find others who could share the burden of existence in a vast, empty universe. Instead, they had found death. "Show me planetary defenses," Hassan ordered. Rodriguez shook his head. "Minimal. Their technology seems focused on creation rather than destruction. The attacking fleet is targeting their cultural centers first, libraries, universities, what appear to be artistic installations. They're erasing them," Sarah realized. "Not just killing them, destroying everything they ever were." Hassan stood, her decision visible in the set of her shoulders. "Humanity spent too long wondering if we were alone in the universe. I won't stand by and watch a civilization be erased from existence." Lieutenant Rodriguez, power up the quantum cannon. Commander Williams, alert the crew. We're about to remind someone why Earth is classified as a death world. Captain, Williams protested. "We're a research vessel. We're not equipped for combat." Hassan's smile was sharp as a blade. "We're human. Everything we build is a weapon if we need it to be. Dr. Chen, those crystals are alive. Can you communicate with them?" Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. Maybe. Their base structure suggests they use quantum entanglement for communication. If we repurpose our deep space sampling array. "Do it," Hassan ordered. "Commander Williams, send an emergency burst transmission to Earth Command. Tell them we've initiated first contact protocols under extreme circumstances. Lieutenant Rodriguez, plot me a course that puts us between those ships and the planet." As the crew rushed to their stations, Sarah caught the captain's arm. "Maya, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that humanity didn't climb out of the gravity well of a death world by letting bullies win." Hassan's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "And I'm thinking that if we're going to violate first contact protocols, we might as well do it spectacularly enough to make the history books." The Horizon's engines hummed to life, its research arrays reconfiguring into weapons of war. As they moved to intercept the attacking fleet, Sarah couldn't help but wonder if they were about to save a civilization or start an interstellar war. Either way, humanity's first official contact with alien life would be remembered for centuries to come. Not as observers, not as diplomats, but as what they had always been. Survivors who refused to let death have the final word. The crystalline ships ahead hadn't noticed them yet. They would soon learn that humans had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, that every piece of technology they possessed had been built to survive conditions that would shatter lesser civilizations. They were about to learn why humans were classified as Deathworlders, and why that classification had always been more of a promise than a warning. The price of compassion. The Horizon's quantum cannon hummed with barely contained energy as they approached the crystalline fleet. Captain Hassan stood at the command center, her posture relaxed but alert, like a predator assessing its prey. The enemy ships continued their bombardment, oblivious to the human vessel's approach. Broadcasting on all frequencies, Rodriguez reported, his fingers steady despite the tension. No response. Sarah worked frantically at her console, attempting to establish communication with the crystalline beings on the planet's surface. The quantum resonance patterns were complex, unlike anything in their databases. Captain, I'm detecting something strange. The attackers' ships, they're using corrupted versions of the planetary defense crystals. Corrupted how? Hassan's eyes narrowed. It's like they've taken something meant to create and twisted it into a weapon. The base structure is the same, but it's been. Sarah struggled for the right words. It's been tortured. The first of the enemy vessels finally noticed their approach. It broke formation, turning to face them with weapons charge. A transmission cut through their communications, the universal translator struggling to process the alien language. Depart immediately. This operation is sanctioned by the hegemony of ordered systems. Interference will not be tolerated. Hassan's laugh was cold. Sanctioned by whom? I don't see their name on our star charts. She nodded to Rodriguez. Send our response. The message was simple. This operation is now under the protection of humanity. Stand down or be classified as hostile to Earth interests. The enemy vessel's response came in the form of a crystal energy beam that split the space where the Horizon had been moments before. But humans hadn't survived on Earth by being slow. The research vessel's engines, designed for precise maneuvering and delicate scientific observations, proved remarkably effective at combat evasion. That was their mistake. Hassan smiled. Weapons free. Show them what happens when you attack a ship full of scientists who grew up reading military history for fun. The Horizon's quantum cannon fired, its beam precisely calibrated to match the resonance frequency Sarah had identified in the corrupted crystals. The effect was spectacular. The enemy vessel's crystal weapons systems shattered, the pieces dissolving into harmless dust. Direct hit, Rodriguez reported, unable to keep the pride from his voice. Their weapons are offline. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining enemy fleet had noticed them now, breaking off their planetary bombardment to form an attack pattern. 5 ships against 1. Captain, Williams warned, we don't have enough power to disable them all. We don't need to. Hassan's voice was calm. We just need to hold them off until. A new signal cut through their communications. This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel formidable. Unknown fleet, you are engaging a protected human vessel. Stand down immediately or face extinction. The main view screen lit up as 3 human warships dropped out of hyperspace, their massive forms casting shadows over the crystalline fleet. The Thermopylae, a dreadnought-class vessel, was flanked by 2 rapid response cruisers, their weapon systems already tracking targets. Took them long enough, Hassan muttered. Then louder, Admiral, welcome to first contact. Sorry about the mess. Captain Hassan, the Admiral's voice carried a mix of exasperation and pride. I should have known you'd be involved. Status report. As Hassan briefed the Admiral, Sarah continued her analysis of the planetary data. What she found made her blood run cold. "Captain, Admiral, you need to see this. The attacking fleet, they're not just destroying the crystal beings. They're harvesting them, converting them into weapons." The implications were horrifying. This wasn't just genocide. It was slavery on a cellular level. The Admiral's response was immediate. "All ships deploy containment fields. Nothing leaves this system without our permission." To the enemy fleet, he broadcast, "You have 1 minute to power down your ships and prepare for boarding. After that, we will assume you are hostile slavers and respond accordingly." The crystal ships hung in space, their weapons still charged but not firing. Finally, their leader responded, "The hegemony will not tolerate this interference. You don't understand what you're protecting. These beings are a resource, nothing more. Their potential is wasted on art and philosophy when they could be serving a greater purpose." "Ah," Hassan said quietly, "so that's why you're afraid of them. They chose to create rather than destroy, and you couldn't understand why." She turned to Sarah. "Dr. Chen, how's that communication coming?" Sarah's hands flew over her console. "Almost there. The planetary defense grid. It's not just a weapon system. It's a communication network. If I can just..." Suddenly, the space around them lit up with crystalline patterns, beautiful and complex. The crystal beings were reaching out, not with weapons, but with art. With music translated into light and mathematics turned into poetry. "Fascinating," the Admiral breathed. "They're not just communicating. They're showing us who they are." The enemy fleet opened fire, their corrupted crystals blazing with twisted energy. But they had made a crucial mistake. They had given humanity time to understand what they were fighting for. The Earth ships responded with devastating precision. The Thermopyla's main gun spoke with the voice of a dying star, while the cruisers executed a perfect pincer movement that had been practiced in war games 1,000 times. In the end, it wasn't even close. The enemy ships, for all their exotic technology, had never faced an opponent who had evolved on a world that demanded excellence or death, who had turned the art of war into a science, and then turned that science back into an art. As the last enemy ship surrendered, Sarah finally succeeded in establishing clear communication with the crystal beings. Their first message was not one of fear or gratitude, but of curiosity. They wanted to understand why humans, who had never met them before, would risk their lives to protect them. Hassan's answer was simple: "Because that's what humans do. We protect those who create beauty from those who would destroy it." Besides, she added with a smile, "We've been looking for neighbors for a very long time. We'd hate to lose some before we even got to know them." The Admiral's voice cut through the moment. "Captain Hassan, Dr. Chen, well done, but now comes the hard part. The hegemony won't take this lying down, and we've just appointed ourselves protectors of a species we barely understand." "Good," Hassan replied. "It's about time humanity had a proper challenge. Dr. Chen, please inform our new friends that Earth would be honored to establish diplomatic relations, and maybe ask if they'd be interested in comparing notes on crystal-based quantum physics." As Sarah began the first official communication between humans and the crystal beings, she couldn't help but smile. Humanity had just violated every first contact protocol in the book, started a war with a previously unknown interstellar empire, and potentially revolutionized their understanding of physics. All in all, a pretty good day's work for a research vessel. Operation Guardian. The war room aboard the Earth Defense Force Command Station. Aegis hummed with activity. Admiral Chen stood before a holographic display, showing the known territory of the hegemony of ordered systems, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of countless star systems. "They've attacked 3 more crystal being colonies in the past week," he reported to the assembled military and scientific leadership. "Each time, they retreated before our ships could arrive. They're learning." Dr. Sarah Chen, newly appointed head of the Crystal Being Communication Initiative, stepped forward. "The crystal beings call themselves the Lumini. They've shared their star charts with us, revealing at least 20 more of their colonies that the hegemony doesn't know about. Yet, Captain Hassan, her research vessel now retrofitted with military-grade weapons, pointed to several key strategic points on the map. The hegemony is adapting their tactics, but so are we. The Lumini have been teaching us how to integrate their crystal technology with our own. The results have been interesting. The holographic display shifted, showing a new class of human warship. Its hull was studded with living crystal arrays, combining Earth's brutal efficiency with Lumini artistry. The first prototype, dubbed Aurora, would launch within the week. The hegemony made one crucial mistake, Hassan continued. They assumed that because the Lumini chose to focus on art and creation, they couldn't fight. They never considered that choosing not to fight isn't the same as being unable to fight. A new alert flashed across the display. Another hegemony fleet had been detected, this one larger than any previous force. They were heading toward Lumini Prime, the crystal being's homeworld. "They're getting desperate," Admiral Chen observed. "Good. Desperate enemies make mistakes." He turned to the assembled commanders. "Operation Guardian begins now. Show them why humanity's reputation as Deathworlders isn't just about our physical capabilities." The human fleet moved with precision that would have been impossible just months ago. Crystal technology enhanced their sensors, allowing them to track hegemony ships through hyperspace. Every human vessel now carried a Lumini crystal engineer, their artistic sensibilities combining with human tactical thinking in ways the hegemony could never have predicted. The trap was sprung at the Cassiopeia threshold, a narrow corridor of stable space near Lumini Prime. The hegemony fleet emerged from hyperspace to find themselves surrounded by human ships, their exit points blocked by crystalline arrays that turned their own weapon frequencies back against them. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force." His transmission carried across every frequency. "You've been warned. You've been shown mercy. Now you'll understand why Earth is classified as a death world." The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations to come. Human ships danced through space with impossible grace, their crystal-enhanced systems allowing maneuvers that defied conventional physics. The Lumini crystals sang with power, their natural harmonics amplified by human engineering into weapons that could shatter a capital ship with a single strike. But it was more than just superior technology. It was the unique combination of human adaptability and Lumini creativity. Each ship's crystal engineer worked in perfect synchronization with their human crew, turning the battle into a deadly art form. The hegemony's formations, once considered the pinnacle of space combat doctrine, broke apart under the assault. Their ships, designed to fight conventional enemies, had no defense against weapons that operated on principles they had never bothered to understand. "They're retreating," Hassan reported, her voice tight with satisfaction. "Trying to regroup at their secondary rally point." Admiral Chen's smile was predatory. "Not this time. Launch operation checkmate." A new fleet of ships dropped out of hyperspace behind the retreating hegemony forces. Led by the Aurora, they carried a weapon that represented the true potential of human Lumini cooperation. The crystal arrays on their hulls lit up with patterns of impossible beauty, reaching out to the corrupted crystals in the hegemony ships. The effect was immediate. The enslaved crystals, twisted and tortured into weapons, responded to their kindred's call. Throughout the hegemony fleet, weapon systems failed as the crystals remembered what they were meant to be. "Signal from the hegemony flagship," a communications officer reported. "They're requesting terms of surrender." Admiral Chen looked to Sarah, who nodded. The Lumini had been clear about their wishes. Even after everything the hegemony had done, they didn't seek revenge. They wanted understanding. "Tell them their surrender is accepted," Chen ordered, "and inform them that representatives from Earth and Lumini Prime will arrive shortly to begin negotiations for the release and rehabilitation of all captured crystal beings." As the human fleet secured their victory, Sarah watched the Lumini crystals on their ships pulse with patterns of joy and relief. Humanity had come into space looking for neighbors and found a war instead. But in fighting that war, they had discovered something even more valuable: proof that strength and creativity, force and beauty, could coexist and even enhance each other. The hegemony had feared the Lumini because they couldn't understand how a species could choose art over power. They had feared humans because they couldn't understand how a species could emerge from a death world with their creativity and compassion intact. Now they would learn that their greatest mistake had been bringing these two species together, because humans and Lumini had discovered that they shared something fundamental: the ability to take the harsh realities of existence and transform them into something beautiful. The war wasn't over. The hegemony still controlled vast territories, and there would be holdouts who refused to accept defeat. But something had changed in the galaxy. Word was spreading about the species from Earth, the Deathworlders who fought not for conquest or resources, but to protect the right of another species to create beauty. As Sarah watched the crystal patterns dance across the hulls of the human ships, she realized that this victory wasn't just about military might. It was proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive on a death world. It was their ability to make that survival mean something more than mere existence. The enemy within. Admiral Chen stared at the classified intelligence report on his desk, his expression growing darker with each line. Behind him, Earth glowed blue and serene through the viewport of his office on Aegis Station. Captain Hassan and Dr. Sarah Chen sat across from him, waiting as he processed the information. "Are we certain about this?" he finally asked, his voice heavy. Sarah nodded. "The Lumini crystals don't lie. Their quantum resonance patterns detected familiar signatures in the hegemony's weapon systems, components that could only have come from human manufacturing." "Quantum Industries," Hassan said, naming one of Earth's largest defense contractors. "They've been secretly supplying the hegemony with technology for years. The crystal weapons weren't just corrupted Lumini tech. They were hybrids, combining crystal slaves with human innovation." The Admiral stood, pacing before the viewport. "How deep does this go?" "Deep enough to explain why the hegemony knew exactly how to counter our initial tactics," Hassan replied. "They had inside information about our military capabilities. The only reason they started losing was that they hadn't counted on us allying with the Lumini and developing new technologies they hadn't been briefed on." A priority alert flashed across the Admiral's desk console. The hegemony had launched a new offensive, but this time their ships moved with terrifying familiarity. They were using modified versions of Earth's own combat maneuvers. "They're not just using our technology anymore," Sarah observed, studying the tactical data. "They're using our strategies, our doctrine, everything we've developed over centuries of simulated space warfare. And now we know why." The Admiral's voice was steel. "We've been compromised at the highest levels. The enemy isn't just out there. They're here, among us, profiting from genocide." Hassan leaned forward. "Sir, we need to act fast. If Quantum Industries has been feeding them information, they'll know about Operation Guardian's next phase. The planned liberation of the crystal being colonies will fail. Not if we strike first." The Admiral activated his secure command console. "But we need to be careful. If we move against Quantum Industries directly, their allies in the military-industrial complex might try to stop us. We need to be subtle." Sarah's eyes lit up. "The crystals. The Lumini have been teaching me about their quantum communication networks. We can use them to track the flow of corrupt technology. Follow it right back to the source." "Do it," the Admiral ordered. "Hassan, I want the Aurora and her battle group ready for immediate deployment. If we're going to clean house, we need to do it before the hegemony launches their next major offensive." The next 48 hours were a blur of activity. Sarah worked with the Lumini crystal engineers, establishing a web of quantum sensors that could detect the unique signature of corrupted crystal technology. Hassan prepared the fleet, carefully selecting crews who had proven their loyalty beyond doubt. The evidence they uncovered was damning. Quantum Industries hadn't just been supplying technology. They had been actively helping the hegemony develop ways to enslave and weaponize the crystal beings. The corporation's leadership had seen the Lumini as nothing more than a resource to be exploited, and the hegemony as preferred customers rather than enemies. But they had underestimated humanity's capacity for outrage. When the evidence was presented to the Earth Defense Council, the response was swift and unified. Within hours, Quantum Industries facilities were under military lockdown, their executives arrested for crimes against sentient beings. The hegemony's response was predictable. They launched their offensive early, hoping to take advantage of the chaos. But Admiral Chen had been ready for them. The Aurora led a countering force that struck at the heart of their advance, using tactics that had never been shared with Quantum Industries. "They thought they knew all our tricks," Hassan transmitted from the Aurora's bridge as her ships tore through the enemy fleet. "They forgot that humans are at their most creative when they're angry." The battle was fierce but decisive. Without their inside information advantage, the hegemony forces found themselves facing the full, unrestrained might of humanity's military innovation. The Aurora's crystal arrays sang with power, turning the enemy's corrupted weapons against them, while human determination and ingenuity did the rest. As the dust settled, Sarah made another discovery. The quantum resonance patterns revealed that many of the enslaved crystals in the hegemony ships had been trying to resist their programming. They had been fighting back in their own subtle way all along. Even in slavery, they never stopped creating, she reported to the Admiral. Every corrupted crystal was still trying to make something beautiful, even if only in ways too small for their captors to notice. The Admiral nodded, understanding the deeper message. The hegemony and their human collaborators had fundamentally misunderstood both species they had tried to exploit. They had seen the Lumini's drive to create as weakness, and humanity's capacity for violence as nothing more than a tool to be used. They had never grasped that true strength comes from the ability to choose when to fight and when to create, or that the most dangerous opponents are those who can do both at the same time. The cleanup would take time. There were other corporations to investigate, other collaborators to find. But something fundamental had changed. Humanity had looked into the mirror and seen both the best and worst of themselves. They had chosen to stand with those who create rather than those who only destroy. As the Aurora led the fleet back to Earth, its crystal arrays pulsing with patterns of victory and hope, Hassan sent a final message to the retreating hegemony forces. "Remember this day. Remember what happened when you tried to turn humanity's strength against itself. We are Deathworlders not because we choose violence, but because we choose to survive while keeping our souls intact." The Lumini crystals resonated with the message, adding their own harmony to the transmission. It was a song of defiance and creation, of strength and beauty combined. It was the sound of two species who had discovered that their greatest power came not from fighting alone, but from fighting together for something worth protecting. Defenders of the weak. The combined fleet of human and Lumini ships hung in high orbit above New Terra, their hulls gleaming in the light of an alien sun. The Aurora led the formation, its crystal arrays pulsing with patterns that told stories of battles won and friendships forged. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge, watching as the last of the hegemony's surrender beacons activated across their former territory. "Final status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of months of continuous warfare. Captain Hassan's hologram flickered beside him, her image transmitted from the front lines where she commanded the cleanup operations. "The last hegemony holdouts have surrendered. Their leadership is in custody, and our teams are working with the Lumini to free their enslaved crystal brethren." Dr. Sarah Chen's voice joined in from the surface of New Terra, where she was overseeing the establishment of the first joint human Lumini research facility. "The liberation process is proceeding better than expected. The corrupted crystals respond almost immediately to the Lumini healing harmonics. They remember who they are." The Admiral nodded, satisfaction evident in his bearing. The war had been costly, but the victory was complete. The hegemony's empire of exploitation had crumbled in the face of humanity's determined defense of their crystalline allies. "We're receiving a transmission from the Lumini High Council," the communications officer announced. "They're ready to begin the ceremony." The main viewport shifted, showing the surface of New Terra, where thousands of Lumini crystal formations had arranged themselves into a vast, living amphitheater. Human diplomats and military personnel stood alongside their crystalline allies, witnessing the formation of something unprecedented in galactic history. The Lumini High Counselor's voice resonated through the crystal networks, translated simultaneously for all present. "Today, we mark not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new era. Our people have lived in isolation. Fearing contact with others would lead to our exploitation. Humanity proved us wrong." Sarah's voice carried pride as she translated the more subtle harmonics underlying the counselor's words. "They're not just talking about military alliance. The Lumini are proposing full integration of our civilizations, a sharing of art, science, and culture unprecedented in their history." The Admiral smiled, remembering the day months ago when a single human research vessel had chosen to stand against injustice. Who would have thought that the galaxy's premier Deathworlders would end up as the defenders of artists? "It makes perfect sense," Hassan replied, her hologram gesturing to the crystal arrays that now enhanced every human ship. "We survived Earth by learning to adapt, to take what tried to kill us, and turn it into tools for survival. The Lumini survived by learning to create beauty even in the harshest conditions. Together, we're unstoppable." The ceremony continued below, but a new alert caught the Admiral's attention. Long-range sensors had detected unusual activity at the edge of known space. "What are we looking at?" Sarah's instruments focused on the anomaly. It's another civilization. Pre-FTL, just achieving spaceflight. And they're not alone." Her voice hardened. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace near their homeworld. Design matches some of the minor species that used to work with the hegemony. "Vultures," Hassan spat, "looking for new prey now that their masters are gone." The Admiral's decision was immediate. "Captain Hassan, take the Aurora and Battle Group 3. Show them what happens to those who prey on developing civilizations." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Take a Lumini crystal engineer with you. Let's show them the true meaning of strength." As Hassan's ships prepared to jump, Sarah made another discovery. The new civilization, their primary art form appears to be music. They've been broadcasting it into space, hoping someone would hear. "Well then," Hassan's hologram smiled, "I think it's time for humanity and the Lumini to arrange a first contact concert they'll never forget." The Aurora's crystal arrays pulsed with anticipation as the battle group entered hyperspace. They had started this journey as researchers and explorers, become warriors out of necessity, and emerged as something more. Protectors of those who might otherwise be lost to the darkness between the stars. As the Admiral watched them go, he reflected on how far they had come. Humanity had entered the galactic stage as Deathworlders, feared for their strength and resilience. Now they would be known for something far more important, their choice to use that strength to defend those who chose to create rather than destroy. The Lumini High Counselor's final words resonated through the crystal network. "Let all who watch know this truth. Strength without creativity is empty, and art without protection cannot survive. But together, we will show the galaxy a new way forward." Below, on New Terra, human scientists worked alongside Lumini artists, their combined efforts already producing technologies and artworks that neither species could have achieved alone. Their first joint project was nearing completion, a memorial to those lost in the war, built from restored crystal beings who had chosen to remain as monuments rather than return to their original forms. The memorial would stand as a reminder of what had been lost, what had been gained, and what had been proven. That humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight, but their choice of what to fight for. As the images of the new civilization's first tentative steps into space played across his screen, Admiral Chen sent a brief message to Hassan's battle group. "Show them who we really are." The response came back immediately. "With pleasure, sir." Time to add some new instruments to the orchestra. The stars seemed to shine brighter as humanity stepped fully into its new role, not just survivors of a death world, but defenders of those who made the galaxy worth surviving in.